Start.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Recording is on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the School of Technology and Computers Invited Talk, Winter 2026. Today, we have with us Dr. Eric Tin. He is currently a professor in the Department of Computer Science and also the founding member of the Loyola Center for Cybersecurity and the PI for the Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense at Loyola University in Chicago. Today, he will be here to talk with us about the current state of web privacy in 2026. Is your browsing is your browsing on the internet really safe and private? Dr. Eric, if you may.
Okay. Thank you, Harrison, for the introduction. And as I'm going through, I'll be checking the chat. So if anybody has any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And this is just a boilerplate that this research is funded by the NSA and so on. But I'll skip through that. So as you browse the internet, like even now, right? You're all on Zoom or you're on Teams. You're the user on the left-hand side, and you're accessing a server on the right-hand side. And this is how the internet looks like. I mean, in a nutshell, there's a lot more routers in the middle, but each the user, meaning you, will first access your ISP, so Internet Service Provider, which will be your first hop on the internet, and then it gets routed around until it reaches a destination. So your internet service provider could be curious on, what you're doing on the internet. So examples of your ISPs would be like Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, and so on. So you might say, well, so let's say you have Comcast and they know what you're browsing on the internet. You might say, why do you care? Let's say your ISP finds out that you're visiting a soccer website, so it's Barcelona in Spain, and then later on you're visiting some religious website, and then you're visiting Nike's website, and then you find out you're visiting Ashley Madison. I don't know if it's still around, but it used to be a website for people to have affairs from their spouses. And then you go Grindr on a dating website. So individually by themselves, it looks like who cares, right? Like, so I'm going to Grindr, I'm a sports fan, it doesn't matter. But if it's able to find out that there's one user that visits these five websites, you are very likely unique, right? There's probably not another user in the whole world that's going to visit just these five websites. So by knowing the websites you're visiting, they can track you down to just you. So you might find out that you're a soccer fan, you're religious, you're having an affair, and you're married, and you're dating. You're on the dating scene, which reveals a lot about who you are and what type of person you are. So to prevent all of that, a lot of people use HTTPS to encrypt the communication. For HTTPS, everything is encrypted, but the IP addresses are still public. So then you might say, well, I'm going to use a VPN, and my IP address is now hidden, so nobody knows what I'm doing. So what I'm going to show you the next 30 minutes or so, I try to be quick, is an attack called website fingerprinting attacks. It's been around since early 2000, actually. Back then, it was shown that it wasn't doable for various reasons. And then now, we're showing that with machine learning and deep learning, you can do it with pretty high accuracy. So there's an example of how it works. So if you have three websites, say Loyola's website, San Jose, and Texas A&M, I just picked three random websites on the internet. Everything is encrypted, right? So that means you do not see the contents of the messages. but you can still see that there are messages getting sent back and forth. So let's say I'm the user. If I visit Loyola's website, I might send one message or one packet that's denoted in red. That's from me to the website. And then a little bit later, I get another message of medium size for a response back. And then a little bit later, I get a bigger message and then a smaller message. And then if you wait a little bit, you get another message back. So this is how HTTP works, right? So you would send HTTP requests. Again, everything's encrypted, so you don't know the details. You get an HTTP response back, which is probably the HTML page. And then maybe you might get, a CSS file or, the icon, and then maybe you get a picture as a web page is downloading. And you visit a different website, let's say San Jose State, it's going to be similar. You send your HTTP requests, and then a bit later, and the delay could be different, right? Because it's a different website. You get a different packet size packet back, which could be bigger than the one we have before. And in this example, maybe you send another HTTP request again for other files. Maybe there's a video or something on that website, and you get back multiple responses. And the same for the third website. So if everything is encrypted, you can still see the size of each message and the direction of the message, right? So that's not private. So an example of it, if you go drop off a package at USPS or FedEx, right? The contents of the envelope or in your box is going to be private, but people can see that, oh, I'm sending a small envelope, I'm sending a big envelope, or I'm sending a big box, right? So based on that, you can try to guess what it is. So you can see from those three websites, every communication is unique. So every pattern is unique. So based on that, if you see some pattern of requests and responses and the size of the messages, you can try to match among those three possibilities which one it is. So in this one, it's the first one, right? So it's a perfect match. And all you're using is just the number of packets, the size of each packet, and the direction, whether it's, in this case, red or green, but it's incoming or outgoing. So in terms of accuracy, you could do two things. One is you could do a multi-website classification. So let's say you're given 1,000 websites and you're trying to guess which one of the 1,000 websites someone is visiting. So this is what we just did here. This is a 3-website classification. You're just trying to guess which website it is. Doing that, you get about 94% accuracy. Or you can also do a binary classification. So for example, here, you have 3 websites, but all you care about is a binary response, so yes or no. For example, you can say, is somebody visiting Loyola? Is it yes or no? So if it's this one, it's a yes. If it's either one or the other one, it's a no. So you don't care which specific website you're visiting. You just care that, are you visiting the website that you're monitoring? Right, so that's why binary classification is also known as open world. And that's when you get over 90% accuracy. So why you want to do one or the other, multi-website, there are billions of websites on the internet. So doing a billion website classification is very, very difficult. And you don't care, right? Like if you might not care that somebody is visiting, I don't know, watching a cat video somewhere, but if they're visiting, let's say you are somebody in the Middle East and they're visiting CIA.gov, that might be something that you care about because that could be a spy or something. All right, so that's why you have binary classification. Maybe there's a small set of websites that you care whether somebody is visiting that website or not. So this is what's been done before, and some of the problems is that other research papers have assumed that you can see the whole network traffic from beginning to end. and that you only browse one website at a time. So meaning that you open your web browser, you go to a website, you would close it, and then you open the browser again, you visit a second website, and then you close it, right? So, but this is not how people browse the web, right? Um, so that's the first thing we want to look at. So the data set we use is from this paper, and we had 100 website in the closed world, and the open world we had about 100 and almost 120,000 websites. So this is how our classification work. We have the network traffic, and we use a CNN classification that we just use a default one. So it's not anything new that we created. And then the classification would determine or try to guess whether the network traffic contains one website or multiple websites. And if it's one website, what we also try to remove is, again, previous work assume that you get everything from beginning to the end. But in our case, we say, well, what if you're missing the beginning of the website, right? Let's say you start recording traffic, but you miss the person started visiting the website before you recorded the traffic. Or on the right side here, you're missing, oh, sorry. On the right side, you're missing the beginning of the traffic. On the left side, you're missing the end of the traffic, right? So you're either missing the beginning or the end, so you're somewhere in the middle. And then if it's a multiple web page visit, so meaning that you open one tab on your browser, you visit a website, as it's still downloading, you open a second tab and you visit a second website. So this is how most of us browse the web, right? We don't have just one tab open, we have hundreds of tabs open. And then in this case, the classification is trying to predict the first website you're visiting and predicting the second website. And the way we set it up is you can scale it up to as many websites as you want to. So this is an example of the traces, right? So if you have website one takes from time A to D to download. Website two takes from time C to F. So the part in pink or purple is the part of the network traffic that's overlapping. And then the beginning here is a website one and the end is the website two. So the figure on the left is for if you only had one website. So instead of two websites, you just have one. The red line is the accuracy if you're missing, if you have the first n, so this is n% of the traffic. Right. So if you have 100%, so that means you have every network packets, you can see everything. The accuracy you get is like over 95%, right? So that's the y-axis is how many percent of the traffic you have, and the x-axis is the how many percent of traffic you have, and the y-axis is the accuracy. And as you go down, so let's say you're missing the traffic, you have 80% of the first 80% of the network traffic. So you're missing the last 20%. The accuracy is still pretty high at over 95%. So what that means is the end of the network traffic does not matter as much. On the other end, if you have only 80% of the remaining or the lost network traffic, so you're missing the first 20% of the network traffic, the accuracy goes down significantly to around 65%. And then as you get more, then it kind of goes up. Right. So what this shows is the beginning of the network traffic is more important. And if we go back a little bit to this picture, the beginning of the network traffic is where you usually have all the HTTP requests and the HTML page. After that, usually it would be the pictures and other files that might be similar. So the beginning would be where there's the most interaction, right? Because that's where you're clicking download, and so on. And then on the figure on the right, that's when we have two websites. So we use two machine learning models, CNN and LSTM. Again, we use the default, so there's nothing like novel that we have. But for the first website, that's the line on the top, we're able to predict the first website with pretty high accuracy, like almost 80%. For the second website, the accuracy of predicting the actual website goes down to about 65 to 70%. And this is expected because if you go here, you're missing, for the second website, the first spot here is in pink. That means that if you see network traffic, it's kind of, you see double. So you don't know which is website one, which is website two. And then to kind of wrap this up, we have for the whole network traffic, when we determine whether it's one website or two websites, we have an 85% area under curve. And for the first website, for when you have the beginning of the network traffic, we get 95% AUC. Without the beginning of the traffic, we get 70%. And then for the two website network experiment, we have a 95% of predicting the first website you're visiting and a 75% the second website. So this is out of 100,000 website. So if you were to do random, it's going to be less than 1% accuracy, right? If you just randomly guess. So even though 75% might not look that high, it is much, much better than random. Okay, so the second work we looked at is DNS traffic. So DNS, the domain name, gets a domain name like a.com and gets back an IP address. DNS used to be in plain text, and they changed to, obviously, sending anything in plain text means that anybody can see your traffic. So now pretty much every browser you're using is using DNS over HTTPS or DOH for short. And what we're trying to see is, instead of looking at the network traffic of the website download like we did earlier, can we look at the DNS requests and figure out what website visited? So if the DNS request in plain text, you would see that there's a request for google.com, so you know that that person is visiting Google. So you don't even need to do anything, right? But if it's encrypted, we're trying to do that website fingerprinting attack where we look at the packet sizes and then determine what website it is, right? So we're not trying to decrypt the message. We're just trying to guess based on the packet size. So the advantage of doing that on DNS versus web traffic is that websites or web pages tend to be dynamic. Right? If you go to a website today and you go to it tomorrow, it probably looks a bit different, especially for websites like news websites. Like Google probably stays pretty consistent, but any other one, like even TikTok would change every minute, right? But DNS traffic is probably going to be more stable. So you don't need to retrain your data. There's also a smaller number of packets because DNS is all plain text. So there's probably fewer number of packets, so it's probably easier to do. And DNS usually happens only at the beginning. So if somebody is downloading a file, let's say downloading a movie, you don't need to wait minutes to do the fingerprint because the DNS is going to be just the very beginning, which is going to be a few seconds or less. Right, so I know we started late, so I'm going to skip through some slides. The setup is we look at the Alexa top 1 million websites. So Alexa is a list that ranks popularity of websites. And we use Ubuntu, Firefox, and the DNS server we use is Cloudflare. And this is how we set it up. We start up Firefox. Right here, we wait a little bit for it to start up. And then we start TCP dump, which is a network traffic capture. We visit a website and we wait 30 seconds just to make sure that everything downloaded. We stop capturing network traffic. We kill Firefox, and then we repeat this. We start Firefox again and keep going. Right. So we did that for DNS. And then we have 10,500 websites. In the end, we ended up with 10,000 websites because 500 websites were not accessible, or they could be. So when you look at Alexa, they will give you the website. Some websites are like CDNs, which are not, like, for example, applecdn.com, which is not a real website, but it's a domain name. So anyway, so in the end, we had only 10,000 websites, and then we repeated 20 times for each website. Then we use random forest, which is a classical machine learning algorithm, and our features were unigram and bigram, or the first 50 outgoing packet sizes. So if this is our packet sizes, again, everything is encrypted, so all we can see is the size of each packet and whether it's outgoing or incoming. So for outgoing packets, we denote it as a positive number. For incoming packets, we denote it as a negative number. So again, you cannot have negative you cannot have negative sizes, but we have the number just to denote the direction. And since we're only looking at outgoing, so that means we only look at positive numbers. So the unigram features are going to be just the positive numbers out of that, which is 60, 78, 56, 78, and then 60. And then the bigram features, the bigram, that means we take every pair of positive numbers. So we take 60 and 78, and then 78 and 56, 56 and 78, and then 78 and 60, which is these two. Right. And these are our features that we feed into our random forest. And then we had, for a closed world data set, so we had 10,000 websites that we visited, and we visited each 20 times. So we took 90% of that 90% of that 10,000 website. We did a 5-4 cross validation. So that means we divide up this data into 5 sections or 5 falls. And then we train on 4 of the 5, and we validate on the last one. And then we kind of mix it up. We train on the other 4, and then train on the 5th one, and we repeat it 5 times. So the accuracy we get on that is 94%. And then the final model, based on what we find, we test it on 10% of the remaining data that's out here. And then the final accuracy we get is 95%. So that means with 95% accuracy, we can predict which website someone is visiting based only on their DNS data. And if you want to see the graph, so the blue-ish part is a correct prediction, and then the orange are the incorrect. So that's 95%. There's a lot of blues on the top that overlapping, so it looks like a straight line. And then we tried a open world data set where we had the same training data, and then we visited 100,000 other websites. And we did the same thing as before, the cross-validation, training data. But what we're trying to do now is determine whether a website is in the training data or outside. So when we have all the 100,000 websites, we get 80% accuracy on whether a website is in the training data or not in the training data. So it's a binary classification of yes or no. Then we have some other improvements where we can get up to 93% accuracy. And then if you want to look at the probability graph, so the left side is all the correct predictions. All on the right, everything is showing as incorrect, which is actually correct because none of these are in the in the training data, right? So all the 100,000 websites are outside the training data, so it's going to guess that it's outside. So that's why you see all the oranges. So what we've done so far, what I've shown you so far is website fingerprinting. So meaning that you visit different websites of like different domains, different websites. What not many people have looked at is web page fingerprinting. So if you do on one website, you have multiple web pages. Right? And can we determine which web page one website somebody is visiting? So this is a little bit more difficult because every web page of your website probably looks very similar. Right. So if you go to, I don't know, let's say you go to a news website like say BBC, every article BBC would have the same template, right? The beginning will be the banner at the top, maybe the article, and then some ads on the left or on the right. So we're trying to see if we can fingerprint each web page instead of each website. So what we did a couple of years ago, we looked at four web pages. So the first one is Wikipedia, New York Times, because we wanted a news website that was free to access, that doesn't rate limit us, and then Google, and then we also use a VR headset because so VR headsets also use HTTP to or HTTPS to do communication. So for Wikipedia, we randomly collected 1,000 articles, and the accuracy we get is about 70%. And again, other Wikipedia articles are pretty similar, right? It's all text, but they are different sizes, right? Some articles are bigger than other articles, so that's how we're able to get a fairly high accuracy on predicting which article someone is visiting. And then with New York Times, we did the same. We visited 1,000 random articles, and our accuracy was about 48%. But if you were to do the base accuracy, it would have been 0.1%. And why that got a bit different, a bit lower than Wikipedia, was because there were a lot of dynamic content that impacted our analysis, like ads and things like that. And also New York Times changes more quickly than Wikipedia. Like Wikipedia doesn't change from day to day, probably. And then for Google autocomplete, so we have about 1,000 queries, and we were trying to guess as you're typing each key in Google, like if you type, say, S, maybe Seattle might show up as one of the choices, right? And then you type E, you get a narrow list of choices, and as you're typing, the suggestion box kind of becomes smaller. So we're trying to see, based on the Google autocomplete network traffic, can we guess what you're typing on the keyboard? So with that, we got a fairly low, but it's still higher than the base case. So we got 22%. The base case is less than 0.1%. But we just wanted to see how well we could do. And this is difficult. I mean, for obvious reason, right? When you type A, that could look the same as you typing S, right? How do you tell what the difference is? But 22% is still not too bad. And there probably is room for improvement there. And then finally, we look at the MetaQuest like virtual reality headset. So this one, we had 14 actions. So some actions was searching for football on Google, searching for Spider-Man on Netflix, playing some games. This was manual, so we actually had to have somebody do those actions. So that's why we had fewer actions. We couldn't do 1,000 actions. That would take way too long. And we only did each 5 times. For this one, we got about 91% accuracy. So we're able to guess what you are doing on your VR by just looking at your network traffic, right? So that's what the accuracy means. And then my last few slides is countermeasures. So to protect against website fingerprinting, The three main countermeasures are padding. So meaning you make every message look exactly the same, then you cannot tell which message is which. Or you can use some delay where you make sure every message comes at the same time. Or you can add noise, which means you can add random messages in that don't mean anything and just fake messages, just to confuse the attacker. So what we found, so this looks a bit maybe a bit complicated graph, but the x-axis basically time. As you see, so message one is here, message two, message three, four, five. So as the x-axis goes from left to right, it's each message as it coming in. The blue-ish dots are the incoming packets, and these are shown as negative numbers. Obviously, you cannot have negative sizes, so we just have negative so that we can separate the two packet directions. So the blue is the incoming, and the purple or pink is the outgoing one. And what you can see after a certain amount of time, or at the very beginning of the network of the website download, your incoming messages are all over the place in terms of sizes. And after a certain number of time, which is denoted by this line here, it's pretty much flat. You either have messages of size about 1400 bytes or messages of size 500 bytes or control messages, which are 0 bytes. And for the outgoing messages, they're mostly a straight line as time goes. So what this tells us is if you were to do website fingerprinting, again, the beginning is the most interesting because that's where you have the most variation, right? If you look after this line here, every website will look similar. So if you're trying to do website fingerprinting on this data on the right of the line, you're probably not going to get very high accuracy. So since the beginning is the most important, so what we try to do is, can we just blur or like add noise to the beginning of the network traffic, right? That's if you can mess this up, make this kind of be random, then your defense should work. So this is what we did. We called it scream start because we just kind of scream, but you only do it at the beginning. And our accuracy goes down from about 95%, which is a one with no defense, to 79%. And then we also compare with other defenses out there, and they're all doing better than us, as you can see on this column. But for every defense you do, whether you're adding padding or you're doing noise, you're adding overhead, right? Because every message is now going to be bigger. So, for example, this one, CS Buffalo from a few years ago, the accuracy is low, 22%, but the overhead is pretty high. That's over 100%. So if you're sending 1 kilobytes of data, it's sending way more than 1 kilobyte. So that's a lot more. But for our screen start, we don't get as low in accuracy, but we get very low bandwidth overhead, so only 3%, which is pretty negligible. And then we have a scream start double. So instead of screaming once, we scream twice. Our accuracy goes down to 26, which is comparable to the other defenses. Oh, and then one thing, so accuracy, if you're trying to defend, a low accuracy is better, right? Because a 95% accuracy, that means the attacker is winning in a sense. So if you're defending, you want to decrease the accuracy. So anyway, so we get 26%, which is pretty good, but we also get a higher bandwidth. So basically what we have in our defense is a toggle or a knob where we can just scream a little bit or we can scream a lot. And then if we scream a lot, it reduces accuracy but increases overhead. If we scream a little, it's the other way around. So what other ongoing work we have is like 90, probably 95% of all papers on this area has focused on PCs, so desktop or laptops. While we have a huge data set of like I don't know how big it's huge data set on using smartphones. So can we do the same attack on smartphones? And we had four different phones as well to try to do it. And then finally, a lot of people say, "Oh, you use VPN, right, to be anonymous." And we showed that the using VPN only decrease your the attack success rate by only about 5 to 10%. So it's not doesn't make that big of a difference by using VPN. Oh, this looks a bit blurry, but this is a the I don't know. We did a So if you remember the web page fingerprinting we did before for Wikipedia, we got like I think 70-ish% accuracy. We have a new so we just this is like probably a couple of weeks ago. We have a new algorithm that's getting about 94% accuracy on this. So we improved it by a lot. And then these are all the students I worked with, mostly undergrads. It's most of the pictures, not everyone in here. And just want to thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Dr. Eric, for your presentation. And so glad that we finally managed to brought up you know, the concern when you are surfing the web because many people do not think about how their data is actually being used
Mm.
and used like a product for companies out there. Um, Morgan, it seems like you have questions, yeah?
I'm trying to unmute.
I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, Dr. Eric, thank you so much. Technical difficulties happen. I saw you're working with a lot of students. Are they coming in through classroom activities or student clubs?
Um, a bit of both. So I'm the advisor for all our cybersecurity clubs. So, um, and I know them through that or through classes, but I would say majority classes. Like they take my
Okay.
intro course and then they got interested. We have a Loyola is a bit different. We have a research program for undergraduate students. So it's a little bit like an REU, like an NSF REU, but it's internal. So students can apply for it and they're only competing with other students, so not anybody outside. And then they do research and then if we work well together, then I say, well, you can continue for another year. So I don't have to, what I'm trying to say, I don't have to find money out of pocket. The university provides the funding for it.
All right. And thank you, Dr. Eric. Thank you, Morgan. I believe there is a question from Sam, and he
No.
asks, what is the most useful, what is most useful for you through this research? I assume the most useful findings or result or conclusion.
Um, the most useful conclusion, basically this one, I know it's a little bit blurry. I'm not sure what happened here, but that we're getting like for Amazon, I can tell what product you're buying on Amazon, even though everything is encrypted with like 99% accuracy. So if you go Amazon, buy something, an adversary can find out what it is, and that can reveal a lot, right? I mean, if you're buying, yesterday I bought AA batteries. That's probably not a big deal, but if I'm buying something that might be a bit more sensitive, I might be worried about that.
Got it. Hmm. So, does anyone else have any questions? On a count of five,
Can
four.
we have one more question? So can we more about the student clubs? You said that all cybersecurity student clubs. So can we know more about the student clubs, including you mentioned about the research group, but overview about your student clubs and what is
Yeah.
yeah.
So we have two student club. One is WiCyS, so Women Cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
They hold bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks they have a mentorship meeting.
Okay.
So they meet with students. So usually be the seniors kind of mentoring younger students, but also be grad students can be
Mm-hmm.
part of that. And then the other club we have is our competitions club. So
Mm-hmm.
as the same cadence, every 2 weeks they meet and they find some capture the flag. Like right now, this Saturday on February 14th, we have a CCDC. So that's Illinois qualifying for the collegiate cyber defense competition. And they met today at 4 o'clock to
Mm-hmm.
go over some like training, like some setup for that competition. So every 2 weeks they pick some competition and they try to kind of prepare for it or solve through it. Like 2 weeks ago there was a competition called Pascal CTF and they met as a group. That was over the weekend. So on Friday they met as a group and then they they try to solve as many challenges as possible. Yeah, and
Um,
all our clubs are self-run, so all I have to do is buy them food. But
um,
they self-organize, but if they need snacks, drinks, I buy it for them.
so not being from a cybersecurity background, I mean, I was wondering, how would you get the TCP dumps? I mean, if we are, testing data for such a big audience, how would we capture those?
So if you're a like I say you're AT&T, you can capture network traffic of every of your client.
So for the project, like what methodology was adopted?
So what we did is it was all run in lab. So we obviously cannot capture real people's traffic because that'll be kind of ethical issues. So we captured our own data. So we had multiple virtual machines in our lab, and they were running, and we captured the network traffic for those machines. And so it was all kind of simulated, but they were running real web browsers and visiting real websites.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sumani. Thank you, Dr. Eric. I believe I think that should be the end for our invited talk today. Once again, very appreciative of Dr. Eric for sticking through and everybody for um, coming along over to Zoom despite the technical difficulties. Yeah, we will be seeing everybody again on week 8.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
You guys
Okay,
have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
have a good night.
Night.
All right, I think you can